My name is Jessie Ace. I'm part of a group of enabled warriors that you've probably never heard of. We're fighting back against our invisible illness and taking the dis out of disability. We don't give sympathy to our symptoms. They enable us to be the warrior that we are. If you ask doctors and nurses, they'd say what we're doing is impossible. But pushing the limits of our conditions is something that we have to break through every single day. See, we push the limits. We are mentally strong, and we can do anything. The question is, how far can we push those limits? This podcast will give you the answers. I'm Jessie Ace, and this is the Disabled to Enabled podcast. Hey Enabled Warriors! Today on the show we have Anisha. Anisha loves dance, and when she was diagnosed with everything, she said that she will not stop me. Everybody can dance, and she runs inclusive dance classes, and she also does charity events, community events, corporate and private events. She basically never stops, guys. She was also one of the beautiful inspirational faces behind the This Girl Can campaign. And I'm so excited to hear more about all of that as well. She's also a local ambassador for it, which is fabulous. So I'm so happy to have you on the show today, Anisha. You're amazing. So please, can you say hi and tell us a little bit more about what you do day to day?
Hi Jessie, and thank you so much for having me on here. Actually, I'm really excited to be chatting to you today about everything, and as you said, diagnosed with everything. As well. So, there'll be loads to chat about today. So day to day, I actually work in mental health. So I work in the primary care mental health area, so supporting people who have mental health issues. So it could be anxiety, depression, they may have experienced trauma, and they are experiencing employment issues. So I work to support them kind of with whatever issues that they have. So that's me by day. By night, basically a dancing superhero. I teach, as you mentioned, I teach inclusive dance classes to people who may have disabilities, long-term health conditions. But the reason they're inclusive is that I teach them alongside people who don't have any disabilities or long-term health conditions. Okay. So essentially we're all under one roof, dancing together, having fun, whooping, cheering, going a little bit crazy. Well, I think, to join in, you kind of have to be a little bit mad. But we just love to dance and we love music. And it's very much around bringing people together in spite of what they may be experiencing, what they are living with. It's very much, which fits in great with your podcast, is very much enabling people to do what they are able to do, kind of across a really broad spectrum. So I have students who have multiple sclerosis, cerebral palsy, who have had spinal cord injuries. I have one lady who's an amputee, so she only has one leg, and she dances my class from a wheelchair. And like I said, dancing alongside people who don't. And the reason it was really important for me is, so I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis in 2008. So I was just 24 at the time. And ulcerative colitis is essentially, it's an autoimmune condition. So my immune system attacks my gut and causes my gut to become inflamed and ulcerated. So there's loads of symptoms associated with that, including things like diarrhea, constipation, losing blood, anemia, stomach cramps, fatigue, as we know in so many autoimmune conditions. Fatigue is a real can be a real debilitating symptom, and something that I've certainly had to look at how I manage over the years. But for me, again, it's very much about, how do I enable other people to live positively with their conditions and be able to do things that they really, really enjoy, but in a way that's comfortable for them, just in the same way for me, you know, what I used to be able to do and what I do now post-diagnosis is different. I do need to think about different ways of doing things. But when it comes down to it, I love music and I love dancing. And no, I may not be able to hit the dance floor for 12 hours straight these days anymore, but I can go and teach my classes. And for an hour, you know, we are all together, letting loose, having a party, you know, in the middle of the week, without having to worry about, you know, getting home really late, or, you know, how are we going to get home, or, you know, all those kinds of things. So it's still kind of, you still get a little bit of a taste of it without the kind of repercussions that you would get if you were to go for, you know, a crazy night out, like, you know, like I used to be able to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it, and I love being able to give other people that opportunity.
Yeah, that's amazing. It really is. And I love the fact as well that you have people who have conditions and then people who don't as well, because then that gives them chance to kind of learn about all these conditions.
Definitely. And that's one of the things that I think through my classes we've created a really unique atmosphere. And it's also like, it's almost like we've built our own tribe. You know, we all get on really well. We go for socials, we go for Christmas lunch, we go to parties together. But what's been really key is that it's actually opened up a dialogue between people who may never have had the opportunity to meet.
Yeah.
So, you know, for some of my students, it's the first time that they've been in regular contact with somebody either with a long-term condition or with a disability, for example, a wheelchair user. And there are lots of things which, when you have a long-term condition or a disability, just become a normal part of your life. You don't even think twice about it. But for people who have never experienced that, or who have never really had any kind of contact with people who have any of that, it's not something that they've ever thought of. And actually, you know, we've had discussions in classes or when we've been at Christmas lunch around, you know, so what's it like, you know, when you have to use a wheelchair, or how do you navigate this, or, you know, for example, fatigue. Well, how do you manage that? Because you always seem so full of energy. You know, people say that to me, but you're a dance teacher. Surely you must have loads of energy. And, you know, and then I have to explain to them what I have to do for me to manage to do that, because it's actually, you know, what we see on the outside isn't necessarily what's going on the inside, which, you know, with invisible illness is very often the case. You know, on the outside everyone thinks, oh, you look great and everything is amazing, and actually on the inside sometimes you're just thinking, oh gosh, I just feel like, you know, I'm hanging on by a thread. I'm so thankful to have met these people and have them in my life, because they help me to keep going when I'm having a tough time with, you know, my colitis, or, you know, I've experienced mental health issues as well. So when I'm having a really tough time, I know that they're there for me too, and that's okay.
How long have you been doing it for?
So I've been teaching since 2015. And I essentially, so the reason I started, there were actually a couple of different reasons why I started. So obviously with my colitis, I was finding it harder to do the things that I used to do. So I was actually a hockey girl. I played hockey from basically when I could start walking.
Wow.
Yeah, I loved it. You know, it's a family thing as well. My sisters played, my dad played, he used to coach us as well. And, you know, and I played to quite a high level. It was really an ambition of mine to try and see how far I could go. But with my colitis, I was finding it harder and harder to manage. So it involved a lot of traveling to, obviously, you know, to matches. You know, a match, 70 minutes, being on the pitch, no access to a toilet necessarily. And I was finding it, you know, energy wise, it was taking me longer and longer to recover. And also part of my colitis. So when I've been in, you know, having a flare up, it can be really difficult to eat. So for quite a long period of time, I was really struggling to eat because I essentially couldn't keep anything in. It would go in, it would come back out, and I was in constant pain. And as we know, if you don't eat, you're not getting the nutrients, there's no energy, and it's that cycle. So I was starting to find it really, really, difficult to go and play hockey, and I was finding it was causing me more stress. When it used to be my stress relief, and then because my colitis, actually it was causing me stress in terms of, well, how do I manage my symptoms? So I kind of had to relook at things and go, well, what do I do? And I've always loved dancing. I did a bit of hip hop. I dabbled with a bit of Bollywood, a bit of Indian classical dancing. At a wedding or a party, I'd always be there, having a bit of a boogie. And so I thought, okay, I'll go back to dancing. So I went back to dancing and had a go at Bollywood. And then unfortunately, whilst I was doing that, I had a high-speed car accident.
Oh gosh.
So yeah, so it unfortunately I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. It wasn't my fault. It was driving along a bypass, and essentially a car traveling in the other direction lost complete control of their car, spun over, flipped over the central reservation and hit me head on, traveling at about 70 miles an hour. So it was literally high, like I said, it was high speed. It was something out of a movie. It's something you would see out of Fast and Furious. I was kind of waiting for Vin Diesel or Dwayne Johnson to run out and come and save me, and so that was really, really difficult. I had physical injuries from it. I mean, to be perfectly honest, if it had been a slightly different angle or something else, I wouldn't be here. The car probably would have gone through my windscreen, and I wouldn't even be here talking to you today. So I was really lucky. I consider myself very lucky that I had no life-changing physical injuries from it. So it was all soft tissue injuries, cuts, bruises, whiplash.
Wow.
Which took years to recover from because of the severity of the impact. And I'm small, I'm petite as well, so even just the actual impact on my my body was huge. But following that, I then went on to develop post-traumatic stress disorder, and also suffered with depression and anxiety, which at the time after it happened, I didn't even know. I was just really focused on my physical rehabilitation, trying to get stronger, trying to manage the pain. I couldn't get in and out of bed by myself. I had constant headaches. I couldn't cut my food because, even the muscles and the strength you need to do that, we don't even think twice about it until suddenly that's gone. And so suddenly all these day-to-day things were huge for me. So over time, as I got physically stronger, it was great. But I needed to look for something else I could do to meet that need, that kind of physical release, that stress release for me. But also for my mind as well. It took years for me to access and have the therapies that worked for me to manage my symptoms, particularly of the post-traumatic stress disorder. So I was experiencing flashbacks, I would have nightmares, I had a lot of travel anxiety in a car, so I'd be very hypervigilant, pointing things out to other people, constantly on edge all the time. Sound was a trigger for me, so if there was like a loud bang, or sometimes people will finish their fizzy drink and then crush the can, that was a trigger for me because of the crushing of the metal of two cars when they collided. Smoke So smell was a trigger for me because, you know, there was smoke coming from my car following the impact. So there were lots of symptoms I was just trying to manage on a day-to-day basis. Eventually had various forms of therapy, because not all therapy works, you know, in the same way and what's most appropriate. So I had, you know, various forms of therapy, which, you know, helped, but it was over a number of years. And during that time, I was still trying to just live my life and figure out, well, how do I carry on living my life with all these things? So I thought, you know what, I really miss dancing. So I went back to some dance classes. It was actually my sister that introduced me to the class that I went to. And I just fell in love with it because it wasn't the type of dance class where it was rigid and structured and you had to get it right and there was a right or a wrong. It was a, okay, do what you can sort of thing.
Yeah.
And that for me played a huge role in becoming part of a community again, meeting other people, and also doing something physical. And that's when I realised, actually, do you know, I could create a space for people who are experiencing, you know, whether it's mental health issues or they have a physical disability or they're trying to come to terms or cope with a long-term condition, provide that space for them which is safe and it's judgment-free as well. And essentially that was what prompted me to develop my own classes in the way that I have. So I got a license to teach. I've done a inclusive dance qualification as well to make it something positive for me. So I'm taking this experience that I've had and creating something positive for me to build on, you know, almost for my own mental health and my own well-being.
That's amazing. It really, really is. And that's such a good lesson, warriors, if you're listening. Just I have a saying, okay, so it's not the cards that you dealt that matters, it's how you play them that counts. So, you know, taking a really hard, difficult situation and turning it into a really good thing is just the best thing that you can do. And it's kind of fighting back in the most ultimate way against your conditions and things. I think that's just the most phenomenal thing. You're amazing. Love you.
Oh, thank you. I don't feel it most days. I'm just, you know, when you just hang on by a thread. And I think that's the thing as well to remember is it's not easy. You know, I still have my battles day to day. It's, you know, it's hard. You know, it is really hard. Things don't just fall on your lap.
No.
You know, creating what we have, it's taken a lot of work, and it still does on an ongoing basis.
Yeah.
You know, we love it and we do it for a reason. And, you know, on those tough days, it's okay. It's okay to have the tough days because it also helps us to create really great days and great memories as well. You know, so there are always ups and downs, and, you know, it's not all plain sailing. But again, that's okay. That's
life, isn't it? Life isn't plain sailing.
Exactly. And, you know, we're all in it together.
Yeah. I think you're also quite lucky as well. I mean, and this may sound a little bit weird, I guess, but you are quite lucky in the fact that there's quite a few of your family members that have different invisible illnesses as well, isn't there? So people will get it, if you know what I mean. Whereas my parents kind of don't always, and they kind of just see me as a normal person. They just forget.
Definitely. So yes, I have two sisters who have multiple sclerosis, diagnosed at different times, but essentially within sort of 3 years, all three of us either had, you know, a diagnosis or experiencing symptoms. So it was within a relatively short space of time for all three of us. And it certainly created a different dynamic amongst us, actually. You know, that kind of different symptoms, the understanding, navigating the healthcare system as well, and how to even, you know, how you do that, because that in itself can sometimes be a minefield, you know, if you don't necessarily know how to navigate the healthcare system.
Yeah.
And I think having that understanding and people that you can talk to is really important. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the same condition either. And like I said, that's what we find in my inclusive dance classes, that, you know, we have so many different conditions, but actually we all have a lot in common. Whether it's physical, whether it's mental, whether it's perception from other people, you know, other kind of either barriers or difficulties that may arise, and also some of the positives as well. So yeah, definitely, it's really interesting, I think, when you have multiple people with different conditions.
Yeah.
But also, you know, as frustrating as it can be, having a chronic condition, it's one of the things I'm really grateful for, because I have met some amazing people and built lifelong friendships with these people, which I don't think I would have done otherwise, especially around invisible illnesses. You know, we never really truly know what's going on with somebody unless we talk to them.
Exactly.
You know, unless we create that opportunity. I've had that, you know, I've had, you know, for example, incidents in the supermarket or using the disabled toilets. You know, we have a scheme in the UK where you have a radar key where you can access disabled toilets. I have a radar key because if I'm having a flare up of my colitis and I need the toilet, I have to go. I can't be waiting in a queue. You know, it's a case of you go now. And I have had looks, or I've heard murmurings saying, well, why is she going to a disabled toilet? She doesn't look disabled. She's not using a wheelchair.
Yeah.
You know, and I know I've read so many, you know, stories like that. Or for example, in the supermarket where, you know, I've literally been, you know, dead on my feet, and I've gone to the, you know, one of the cashier desks and said, look, can I pay for my shopping here, please? You know, I had a trolley, it was a couple of items, you know, instead of carrying a basket, which for me would have been I felt physically more demanding than just pushing a trolley with a couple of items.
Yeah.
And, you know, the person behind me said, well, hang on a minute, this person's got a trolley and this is baskets only, despite the fact that they only had literally 4 or 5 items. And I knew that where I had parked, I was going to have to walk down our high street. You know, even just thinking about that, you know, which when you're feeling well and good, you wouldn't even think twice about. But all of that I had to take into account, and I could hear this person behind me getting really angry, saying, well, I don't understand, why is she allowed to do this, and, you know, this, that and the other.
Yeah.
And I was so exhausted, I just thought, I can't even have this conversation to try and explain right now, because it's taking every ounce of my energy just to be stood here right now. You know how sometimes you get the toddlers who just decide, I'm just going to sit down here in the middle of the supermarket, and, you know, I'm just going to have a rest, or I'm just going to play with toys. You know, I could quite easily have done that and just sat down on the floor of the supermarket and gone, you know what, I'm too tired, I just can't move. What someone looks like with an invisible illness, which can be anyone.
Yeah, it really can, and it's so hard. And you said something crucial there, actually. You said that the person behind you said, I don't understand, why is she doing that? And that's a really interesting thing, because I don't think people do understand enough. There is not enough understanding out there, and I think that's the job of the charities, it's the job of all of us to really kind of, we've almost got to educate the whole of the general public. I mean, it's insane. It's about working together as a community. It's about understanding and being from mindfulness about what people are going through, because I don't think we have enough of that.
Definitely. And I think you're absolutely right. It is about explaining to people and educating people. And I think one of the things I felt is that sometimes I felt like I've had to justify.
Yes.
So, well, I'm not well, and it's that justification of, you know, actually right now I'm unwell, and this is why I have to do what I have to do, particularly with conditions which can fluctuate. So, you know, colitis, you can have a flare up, you can be in remission, you can flare up again, you can be in remission. But sometimes what people see is, but you're still doing this. So I don't understand why you can do that, but now you're saying you're sick and actually, you know, you can't do this. Or managing on a day-to-day basis, finding the new you, the new identity.
Yeah.
You know, your new identity with all these things. So, you know, yes, now you have a condition. What does that mean for you? The old you hasn't necessarily been lost, but it's about how do we adapt and how do we navigate this? And that may change over time. And that's certainly been one of, I think, the most key elements to my journey, was actually understanding myself again, particularly around my post-traumatic stress disorder, my depression and my anxiety. Was, well, what does it, who am I now? Because actually I got to a point, you know, I was so used to living with these symptoms, I almost couldn't recognize myself because it had become my new normal. And only obviously having treatment and spending time reflecting on that was I able to then say, okay, well, actually, this bit I'm not happy with, and this bit I'd like to change. That doesn't have to be the way it is. But at the same time, there's been positives which have come out of my experience, which I've been able to use in a different way. So, for example, in my work, I support people with mental health issues. You know, my empathy and my understanding is so much greater having gone through what I've gone through.
Yeah.
Which, you know, before I would have been sympathetic and there would have been an element of empathy.
Yeah.
But it's almost like my eyes have been opened in a way that now they can't be closed. And that for me actually means I'm better at the things that I do because of the experience that I've been through. And yeah, some days it's been pretty awful. I'm not going to lie, but you know, there is so much more that I have gained from that. You know, not just for myself in my own development, who I am, but that I've been able to give to others as well.
Like you said, it's an adjustment, and it takes time, and you will eventually, people listening to this, if you're newly diagnosed, you will eventually kind of adjust to that, and that will be your new normal, and it will be fine.
Yeah, and forging your own path as well. There isn't a right or a wrong.
No,
it's about forging your own path and what feels right and good for you. After you know, I was experiencing these, you know, really difficult mental health issues, I was literally, I was in a state where, again, I would potentially not be talking to you right now. I was literally at rock bottom. Things were really, really difficult for me, and I couldn't see a way out. I was in a black hole. My symptoms were really bad. I would, you know, so much time was spent just crying, and I couldn't understand why, and it didn't make me feel any better. You know, there was no emotional release. And it was a huge decision for me to take, but I decided that I was going to quit my job and I was going to go off to South America. So I quit my job and had less than a month to plan. Where am I going to go? What am I going to do? And I went and spent 5 months in South America. I would never have done that otherwise. If, you know, things may have been different, circumstances may have been different, but at that time, that's what I felt I needed. I needed to, you know, I needed to get away. I needed to get away from everything that reminded me of what I had been through. And so, yeah, I went to South America. I spent 2.5 months traveling. I traveled around Argentina, Brazil, and Bolivia.
Amazing.
And then I spent 2.5 months in Chile. So I found somewhere to rent and was there for 2.5 months. And I got involved with the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation there. I also got involved with the MS Society there. And I was doing voluntary work with an organisation that essentially provided rehabilitation for young people in terms of chronic illness and disability. And it gave me an opportunity to essentially live in another country, experience the culture, get an understanding of what it was like for people living with chronic illness and disability in another country with different, you know, different economy, different healthcare system, different understanding and education. You know, the barriers that they face as well, you know, the different legal kind of protection that you have or don't have in many cases. You know, I met so many different people and communities. I went on a march through the capital city, you know, along with all these different healthcare groups and charities, which was all to do with increased access to healthcare. And I thought, you know, no, this doesn't affect me. I don't live in Chile. This won't be my life. But actually, the connection that I made with these people, it spanned countries, it spanned continents. And I thought, if my voice is one more voice that might be able to make a difference to enable people to access healthcare, I want to be there and I want it to be heard. And it was phenomenal. It was like a festival. There were artists, there were bands playing, people were singing and dancing. So, you know, although there was a really serious point to it, it was a really joyful experience. I mean, I made amazing connections. I'm still in touch with these people. They have been over to the UK and visited and stayed with me. They keep asking me when I'm coming back to visit them in Chile, or some in Argentina as well. But again, it was that, you know, we've all come together and I've met phenomenal people, but that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't been through what I've been through. You know, and as much as you know, I might think, oh, if only the circumstances had been different. But, you know, I wouldn't have got the same experience if my circumstances had been different.
Do you have any advice for anybody else that is in a really kind of dark place right now, who really can't see the end, can't really see how on earth this is all going to work out?
So there is always something out there, and I would say reach out. So, you know, it could be friends, it could be family, it could be to charities, it could be to the healthcare service. Everyone's experience is different. And even if you don't necessarily have a good experience, first of all, keep going, because it will get better, and it can get better even though it doesn't feel like it. So try to reach out and be patient and be kind to yourself as well. You know, when we're in a dark place, it can be really hard to see the wood from the trees. That's okay. But if we can reach out, then it also means that we can have the support, and also we can do things at our own pace as well. So, you know, it's not about trying to necessarily just fix everything in one go. It may take time. It's about one step at a time, and having people around you who are supportive. If they're not supportive, then it's worth considering whether you want them in your life. There have been times over the years where, you know, there are people who I have chosen to not have in my life because I felt that it wasn't healthy for me to have them in my life, and actually it wasn't supportive for me. So to not be afraid of asking for what you need. One of the things about depression in particular is that it makes you feel like you're completely alone, that no one else understands, they don't know what you're going through, and you know, everything is all on you, it's all on your shoulders. And actually, if you speak to anyone who has experienced depression, quite often will say the same thing, but then it's been almost a revelation when they've realized that actually someone else is feeling exactly the same way as me. And there's so many different ways to reach out now as well. You know, I think it's been great that there's been a lot of work in the last couple of years around addressing stigma. So, you know, and you know, whether it's in school, universities, the education system, workplace, or just out in the community, you know, there is a lot of work being done. We need to keep going. We need to be talking about these things, to say it's okay to feel the way you are, but let's find a way to help you move forwards and to manage it, just as you know, the same way we would with any physical condition. We wouldn't expect someone to keep walking around on a broken leg. We wouldn't say that.
No.
So just in the same way, we need to be looking after our minds. We need to be looking after our well-being. Everybody has mental health. You know, if you're human, you have mental health, and we all have different periods which are more difficult than others. But there is help and support out there. There's helplines, there's text lines.
Absolutely. That's amazing. That's really great advice. So thank you so much for that. And warriors out there, if you are struggling with your mental health at the moment, if you feel like you're in a dark place, then please reach out to somebody. Just reach out, get some help, because there is help out there. That's amazing. Thank you, Anisha.
And also, to be honest, ice cream helps me. It makes me happy. You know, it's just one of those things that brings me happiness. So, you know, if in doubt, eat some ice cream. That's kind of my philosophy in life.
We all have that thing as well, don't we? We all have that one thing that just kind of makes us go, okay, like, I'm feeling really bad, I need this, and this will help. For some reason it works. And like, mine is pizza. Mine is
yeah.
I'm having a day where I feel really horrible and like pain setting in, I've got tingliness all over, I'm exhausted, I'm just like, I need a pizza. And for some reason I feel so much better.
Yeah, completely. So for me, it's definitely ice cream, and then I think tea. I think if a good cup of tea. And I just think if everybody sat down and had a cup of tea together in the world, you know, it would be a better and happier place.
It would.
So, yeah, I definitely love a good cuppa.
Oh
good
gosh,
cuppa.
yeah. I'm trying to teach my American friends like the significance of the cup of tea, because they do it, and I'm just like, you don't know what you're missing out on. It's just
it's really difficult to put into words. It's so difficult to put into words, but there is something so comforting about it.
Just like having a hug. I don't know.
It's a hug in a mug.
A hug in a mug.
A cup of tea is a hug in a mug.
Brand or something.
I don't know, but possibly. I don't know. Have you taken someone's strapline, their marketing brand or something? I don't know.
The bell has just gone off in my head. It's triggered something, but I don't know. Okay, we've talked about some really heavy stuff today, and it's been absolutely amazing. So shall we lighten the mood a little bit, go for some super quick secrets, find out a little bit more about you, and have a little bit of a giggle and a little bit of a laugh? Would you say?
Absolutely, I'm up for that. Definitely up for that.
Amazing. Okay, so first question. What is the most inspiring book that you've ever read?
Ooh. One series of books I read was called Conversations with God.
Okay.
I read many years ago. Fascinating. It was just something I went, oh, that's really interesting. Oh, I never thought about that. So it's not a religious book.
Okay.
But it's just essentially about this guy who was writing and essentially having conversations with God.
Wow.
It's, as I said, it's a trilogy, so it's a 3-part in 3 parts. But there were little things, just even in terms of around the English language and some of the words that we use, and kind of how they're formulated, and what you know. I just had light bulb moments, you know, in them. I went, oh, I never thought about that. So that for me was really fascinating, actually, reading it. And as I said, it's not a religious book. It's just basically like having a chat, really. Gosh, I really feel like I've been put on the spot with that. I've read so many books over the years. No, that's the point of quick fire, isn't it? But,
I did send you the questions beforehand. I mean, you know.
I know.
After blowing that.
That's true. That's true.
Favourite comfort food?
Yeah, ice cream.
Ice cream.
I am an ice cream aficionado. If there's anyone that needs an ice cream taster out there, I would happily do the job. Yeah, absolutely. Middle of winter, I'll be sat by a roaring fire eating a great big bowl of ice cream.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it's all about the ice cream with me. Definitely. Absolutely. Yeah. Check.
I love that. So what is the weirdest thing that you've ever done? And be honest.
The weirdest thing. I don't think I'm that weird. I'm terrified of heights. I'm not good with heights.
Yeah.
But I went and climbed a 40-foot pole and jumped off it.
Okay.
That was that was a little bit weird. So it was all part of this outdoor personal development program I was doing.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And essentially it was like a telegraph pole, so really thin.
They're tall.
Yeah, it was really thin. It was about 40 foot. And so basically you had a harness, but it was completely slack, so you actually couldn't feel it, so you couldn't feel any tension at all.
Oh my goodness.
And so you climbed up the pole, but as you're climbing up, because it's so thin as well, it would start swaying.
Oh my gosh, no.
So I climbed up the top, and then what you had to basically do was stand on the top of the pole. Now, I have quite small feet anyway, but even both my feet on top of the pole were still sort of partly off it. So never mind those people that had really big feet. So I'm stood on top of this pole, and it's swaying from side to side. And there was basically a kind of trapeze, like a triangle hanging in midair from a wire. And essentially what you had to do was jump off the pole and try and grab the trapeze.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was crazy. I was absolutely terrified. My heart felt like it was going to burst. But I did it, and then burst into tears with absolute relief because of just the sheer anxiety that it provoked in my body. But that's a pretty weird thing to do on a week away. I mean, I don't know anyone that would necessarily choose to do that, but I suppose that's maybe a little bit weird.
What is the favourite place that you've ever visited?
Oh gosh, that's a tough one. So I've done quite a lot of travelling. One of the places right at the top of my list has to be Rio during Carnival in Brazil.
Wow, I bet that's crazy.
It was, they call it the greatest show on earth, and it really is. There was so much diversity, so many people, the costumes, just the fun, the atmosphere. The beaches are phenomenal in Brazil, but even just in terms of the whole atmosphere. So I went to a lot of the street parties. I also went to the Samba Drome, which is where all the major Samba schools compete. So it starts at 9 o'clock in the evening, goes on till around 5 o'clock in the morning. I stayed the whole night, went back to my hotel, had breakfast, and then slept. But that for me was just one of the most phenomenal experiences I've ever kind of had the opportunity to kind of do. And I would say to anyone, if you ever get the chance to do Carnival in Rio, it is definitely worth doing it, because it is crazy. It's absolute madness, and you just have to go in there with a completely open mind, get stuck in, do a bit of samba, go to the street parties, have some fun, and just enjoy the whole party atmosphere, because it is phenomenal.
Oh, that sounds so good. That's amazing. That's definitely on one of my places to visit, I think.
We can go together. I always said I wanted to go again, so let's book a trip and let's go.
Do it. Let's go. Oh, cool. Okay, so now this is the pivotal question of the whole interview. Okay. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
Warriors at home, are you ready for this? Okay, are you a dog or a cat person?
I'm allergic to both.
Oh!
So maybe a goldfish.
Oh wow. I think I know the answer to this one as well, but the scariest thing that you've ever done, is there anything other than the crazy thing that you did of chucking yourself off a telegraph pole?
It would have to be quitting my job and just going off to South America. I'm just going to pack a bag. I have a vague plan. I have a few flights in place. But it was just an opportunity to go and really spend time exploring, have new experiences, and try to deal with some of the things that I was going through. Essentially I wanted to create some new memories. Because of my symptoms, I was really living in this dark place. I think it was terrifying, not just for me, but for my friends, my family. going, oh my gosh, she's just going off, and you know, what's going to happen, and you know, where's she going to stay, what's she going to do, who's she going to meet along the way. But I think that was probably the scariest thing, because there was literally, you know, nothing really set. It, you know, there was it, you know, a blank canvas. And also, you know, as I said, it was the first time I was probably properly solo traveling as well. So again, I didn't really know what that would be like for me. Thinking about, you know, things like safety, but also, you know, how I can make the most of the experience. So yeah, literally quit my job and went. You know, spent New Year on a beach in Argentina.
Wow.
And then, you know, traveled around. You know, I had one trip where I decided to go to Bariloche in Argentina for a couple of days. So packed a small backpack, had my bus ticket, literally nothing else. Rocked up, had to find accommodation, figure out what I wanted to do. All of this in Spanish as well. So, you know, I speak a bit of Spanish, but I'm not fluent. Yeah, so literally, you know, arrived in Bariloche, on the bus, went to the town centre, got a list of all the places to stay. Was determined I didn't want to stay in a shared hostel, you know, bathrooms and all of that, particularly because of my colitis. So one of the important things for me is having my own bathroom where I can feel comfortable. So yeah, literally rocked up and did all of that. Didn't tell my parents that, you know, I'm just getting on a bus and going for a couple of days with no idea where I'm going to stay, because I didn't want to freak them out. You know, I was a little bit nervous about it, but yeah, you know, something, like I said, some of the experiences I had and things that I did, I just would never have known that I even had the ability to do some of those things.
No, that's amazing.
So yeah, definitely quit my job, going to South America for 5 months, I think is probably one of the scariest things I've ever done in my life.
Oh my goodness. And can I ask you a quick question? Just like in the middle of everything. When you're traveling, what do you think is the best way that you can kind of manage your immune system and kind of keep healthy? Because I know that's a really difficult thing, I think.
It is a really difficult thing. So there's a couple of things that I generally do. So I'm very careful around my food and what I eat. So I'm careful about, you know, not eating salads and, you know, those kinds of things, just in case, because obviously around hygiene. So if I was to get food poisoning, obviously if there is already inflammation in the gut, that can be, you know, really quite serious. So I tend to be careful around food. I try to make sure I always stay hydrated, so making sure I'm drinking plenty of bottled water. I also make sure I keep hand sanitizer and wipes with me. So for example, if I'm staying in a hotel, I make sure that I clean, for example, the light switches and the handles and all the places that I'm going to use, just because obviously, yes, I know things get cleaned, but, you know, people coming in and out, because when you have a suppressed immune system, I have been on medication which suppresses my immune system. So, you know, you are potentially more likely to pick up, you know, viruses and things which can become serious quite quickly. So I tend to be very careful around just general kind of cleanliness. I always have hand gel with me. I was actually joking around with a friend the other day saying I need like a little tool belt where I can keep them all, because then when people ask me, I can just kind of whip out the hand gel, you know, as if I'm like a cowboy, you know, and give it to them. So those are the kinds of things that I tend to do to look after myself. And also in terms of just generally looking after myself with traveling and fatigue. So again, you know, traveling I find very tiring. So I try to, for example, with certain things, plan ahead. So last year I decided to take a solo trip to Madeira for a week, just time to get away, recuperate. Based on the flight times and everything, it was going to be a really long day. I needed to get the train to the airport. So my mum offered to come part way with me in order to help me with my luggage. then I went the rest of the way. I also have, so at some of the airports, they have a scheme where you have a sunflower lanyard, which essentially identifies that you have an invisible illness. So, for example, when I got to the airport, one of the staff members spotted I had the lanyard, and I was taken through the fast track security, so I didn't have to spend time queuing.
Oh, that's good.
Sometimes getting special assistance can be really helpful to manage, obviously, fatigue, so you're not having to walk, you know, so far to gates and things. And I had also planned, so I'd looked at all the different options at the other end around transfers, so shuttle buses, local buses, taxis. And I planned based on the fact how long I was going to be traveling for and how I knew I was likely to feel, that actually, for me, taxi was the best option. It was the most convenient. Yes, it was more expensive, but that would save me a lot of energy, stress and anxiety around the bus and getting to the hotel. And again, I ordered room service that evening. So I knew my plan was to get into my room, clean it, have a shower, get some food in me, go to sleep. The holiday starts tomorrow. So that's kind of what I had to do to manage everything. But it meant in my head, I've made peace with that, okay, I need to budget for a taxi, I need to budget for room service, which would be more expensive than just finding a local eatery. But because I thought about that in advance, I was able to make the necessary plans for it, so that I then wasn't worried, well, you know, am I going to have enough money on me, or, you know, those kinds of things. So yeah, managing fatigue and then also immune system is really, really important when traveling. And I try to pace myself as well, you know, always pacing when I travel, you know, try not to overdo, you know, go crazy the first couple of days and overdo it and then completely crash. So you know, as I said, I love traveling, but I've had to think about how do I manage it with all these things to make it the best experience for me. And you know, when I traveled around South America, for example, I was traveling with 5 months worth of medication. The number of times I got searched, especially in South America, and, you know, swabbing my medication, and, you know, but again, I had a letter from my consultant, you know, explaining everything. I had that translated into Spanish as well, so I had it in Spanish. So practical things like that. I spoke to my healthcare team before I went as well for any additional advice. There is also a website for people with inflammatory bowel disease, so Crohn's or colitis, which is specifically around traveling with IBD. So there's lots of resources and tips out there, and so obviously speaking to other people. But yeah, for me, travel is a huge part of who I am and what I enjoy doing. I don't want that to have to stop because of my condition, or, you know, or anything. So yeah, again, I adjust how I do it, but I still do it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's a huge life lesson as well. It's like these conditions don't have to stop you doing from what you want to do, and there is a way around everything, I think.
Yeah, it's just about finding a different way that we may have to do it.
Exactly. It's about being creatively abled, everybody.
Yes, I love that phrase.
Oh gosh. So just as a kind of wrap up, where can other warriors find out more about you, what you do, your kind of website links and things?
Yeah, so it's mainly based around my dance, but obviously if anyone has any questions or they want to get in touch, about anything that I've spoken about today, they're more than welcome to. So I'm on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook. And the handle is at Zumba with Anisha. So that's ZUMBA with Anisha, ANISHA. So you can find me on social media. You'll see some of the videos from my classes as well to see what people are doing. But again, like I said, you know, all the things that we've spoken about today, mental health, colitis, invisible illness, travel, dance, music, you know, everything. I think we have literally spoken about everything today.
I know, it's amazing.
But yeah, so you can follow me at Zumba with Anisha. Feel free to get in touch, like the page. And if anyone is so I teach in the Buckinghamshire and Berkshire area in the UK. So if anyone is in the area, feel free to get the details. So my website is anisha123.zumba.com. that has all the details of my classes. So feel free, if you fancy a boogie and want to come down and give it a go, come and have a dance with this crazy mad bunch and let loose and join the party.
Well, I've seen some of your videos and they look absolutely phenomenal. And if I was closer to booking your show, I would be straight there.
Yes, we need to get you down for a class one day. Yeah, definitely. And then we'll go for ice cream afterwards. We'll go for pizza.
And pizza. Yeah. Well, so planning our trip to Brazil, obviously.
Oh, absolutely. Do you know, that sounds perfect. Yes, that sounds like a plan to me. I'm ready for that.
Yes, and then we'll have a sleep after because we'll both be knackered.
Oh, absolutely, yes. Well, so I generally tend to exercise in the evening because it means I can go to sleep straight away.
Yes, I do as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it generally works better for me. Whereas my sister is the opposite. She prefers exercising in the morning. That works better for her. Completely different.
It's amazing, isn't it? We're all different. Everybody, you know, there is no right or wrong answer. That's the main thing. So yeah, awesome. Oh, well, thank you so much for coming on the show today. We've learned so much about you and about like different conditions, and we've talked about so much. So it's going to be really, really beneficial to all the warriors out there, I think. And it's just amazing. So thank you so much for sharing your experiences.
It's been my absolute pleasure. And thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for being here. We're honoured. So thank you so much, guys. You can connect with Anisha one more time. Just repeat your website address for me. So it's
anisha123.zumba.com. Yeah, so anisha123.zumba.com. Or social media at Zumba with Anisha.
Fabulous. And I'll put all of those links in the description as well so everybody can find you. Oh my goodness, it's been such a great time. Thank you so much, Anisha. Have a lovely day, and remember, warriors, stay enabled.
If you want to fight back against your invisible illness and help take the dis out of disability, then join the tribe on Facebook, facebook.com/enabledwarriors. If you love this podcast, click that subscribe button and never miss another episode. And remember, warriors, stay enabled.